well, first of all, I recorded it in the summertime. And it was kind of a wonderful feeling being the only person walking down the street in like the heat wave and singing to myself, let it snow, let it snow.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of Innersleeve. I'm Cassius Morris, my co-host Joe Pacheco. What's up, Joe?
Hey, man. Just glad to be here, man. How's your week going so far? Or how's your week been?
It's been pretty good, man. Pretty solid. And I'm actually quite excited because today, this is a milestone for us. If people haven't noticed from the title, we're at episode number 50 of Innersleeve, which is...
Can't even imagine it. Like, where did it go? We had 50 guests. It's crazy.
That's the thing. It's insane to think about. So it was probably around this time, probably earlier than this, around mid-November when we launched the show last year.
No, actually, I think, it would have to be, we started talking maybe in early November, but I think we launched December 20th or something. I remember the first episode being just before the holidays with Ash, and we were announcing it, and man, we hit the ground running and haven't had a chance to take a breath since, right?
It's been crazy. I mean, before we introduce our guest, I'm just wondering from your perspective, because obviously you were here at SoundMojo and you already had something going. What were your sort of anticipations for this podcast? Like, did you see it lasting a full 50 episodes? Did you think, oh, this is just something cute we'll do for a while? Like,
no, I like when I never really think about those kind of things. Like, I think when I do something, I want to go long term. I don't think of an end date unless like there's a specific like, a mandate where we need 13 episodes or something. But no, this was just Watch Mojo wanting to get into podcasts and SoundMojo and music, sort of like just like a glove, fitting like a glove. We just ran with it. But like, if I would be lying if I said I had this whole thing envisioned this way and like we would be here today still talking. Not really. I'm not, I kind of sort of do things without expectation at this point in my life, where it's just like stay in the moment and just, nose to the grindstone and just keep going.
100%. And, what a pleasure it's been and what an experience it's been. So shout out to all of you guys out there. Today's guest on the show is somebody super, super special. If you're subscribed to the Core Watch Mojo channel, which of course you should be, you probably saw a post about this on our community tab. And me and Joe are joined today by the one and only Paul Gilbert, of course, from Mr. Big, Racer X, and his awesome solo career. I mean, yep. I don't know about you, Joe, but for me, probably one of the more enjoyable episodes of this podcast, just due to how you ask the guy one question, he takes it from there.
Oh man, we didn't even get to ask a question. He was already playing guitar.
Yeah. The first interview with no questions. No,
seriously, you just came in the interview. He saw your Kiss shirt at the time, and it's like boom, breaks into a Kiss song. We were just like, wow, thank God we were recording. That's all I remember. Just thank God I was recording from the get-go.
Seriously. It's crazy when you see the guy like that with their instrument like right there in their lap. Like he doesn't want to let it go even for an interview,
No, that's it. And he lives and breathes that instrument, and you see why. Because he's still excited about everything. He's still excited about everything after all this time, after everything he's done, been through. Not bad stuff, but just like his experiences and stuff is phenomenal. Anyways, if you ever asked a 15-year-old me that one day you're going to be talking to Paul Gilbert, about whatever, I would have told you you're crazy. That's all I have to say.
And it's your job. It was your job that day to talk to Paul Gilbert.
Like, wow, already I love this job, and like this is just like even more like icing on a big cake.
It's seriously, it's insane. These are the opportunities to really cherish. And
True.
For everybody who wants to connect more with Paul Gilbert, we have all of his links in our description on the video and audio versions of this podcast. So go check him out on his website. He does all types of different lessons. Of course, his music. He has merchandise out. And speaking of merchandise, Joe, we actually have the SoundMojo line pumping out right now. Are you wearing it right now, Joe, or am I?
Unfortunately,
okay.
My wash cycle is still out of sync with our taping schedule.
Gotcha. We're always like just right here, so I can never tell if it's which hoodie it is. But we do have hoodies. We have T-shirts. We have crew neck T-shirts. Basically something for any type of weather. And it's all representing the SoundMojo brand, which is really exciting. So make sure to check the link for that in our description as well. And I think we're going to jump into a couple little stories before the podcast. Right, Joe?
Yep. This one being a big fan, maybe not as much as the recent Iron Maiden, but I was like a beginning Iron Maiden kind of guy. I thought it was interesting because like everybody's talking about Marvel, this and that, and then like they have their iconic Eddie, right, their mascot, and they just announced that like they're joining forces with Marvel in creating some unique merch.
You know, it's almost strange to hear about this on one hand because it gets you thinking, what's the connection? But when you really start dissecting it, I feel like it's almost strange that it hasn't happened yet. I mean, Eddie probably up there with Wolverine. I know we're seeing Carnage here in terms of how many people represent the character in merchandise, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it makes sense, right? It's his own universe. Eddie's the boss. He's bigger than the devil, like, so it's interesting to see these type of things like this, with Marvel stuff. And I'm not a Venom fan, I don't hate, but like this is a nice shirt, man.
It's really cool. Fear of the Dark. Oh, I didn't even notice that. Okay.
Yeah, it's just great. Cool. I just thought this was interesting to bring up, like just in time, of course, just in time for the holidays.
Exactly. And I do believe that they said in another article there will be a comic book of sorts coming up, and there's going to be a bunch of different things coming up. I almost wonder, is Eddie more of a super villain? Like, I feel like he almost fits in more with a Carnage than, say, a Wolverine.
Oh, good point. I guess, I don't know if he's just everywhere in time. Well, Ace is high, right? He's fighting the plane. I don't know if he's fighting for the good guys, right? Because the song is fighting for the good guys. So I don't know. I just picture Eddie as not good or evil, just Eddie. I've always just seen him that way. I mean, on the Iron Maiden, he's on top of the devil controlling the devil, basically, with the strings. So who knows?
Yeah, that's true. He always seems to be sort of fighting for a cause type of thing. So maybe that is hero-like. That's pretty interesting. Yeah. So shout out to Iron Maiden for that. That's going to be super, super cool. Now we're going to go over to some news that is quite tragic, quite unfortunate, but we did want to pay our respects to this heavyweight in the business. Virgil Abloh, who you may know from a lot of things. He was one of the head people at Louis Vuitton, the way we know it today. One of the main minds, if not the main mind, behind the Off-White clothing brand. And just to name a couple of his contributions in the music world for people who don't know, he worked on various different projects with the likes of Kanye West, including his album covers. He designed Drake's trademark OVO plane, which he currently flies, the private plane. Oh, wow. Yeah. He put together the Nike Air Jordan 1s for Nike and came up with the first recyclable plastic water bottles for the Evian Water Company. So far beyond just one thing. You can't put him in a box as just a stylist, just a music-related guy. Virgil Abloh, a guy who really did it all.
Yeah, and like I'm just shocked that 41 is so young, and like he fought in silence. He chose to keep it private, right? Didn't fight a public kind of battle, kept it super quiet. Really sad, really tragic.
What are your thoughts on that, Joe? Because now we've watched in the past 2 years, Virgil Abloh, Norm Macdonald, and Chadwick Boseman, they all succumbed to private battles with cancer. Do you think this is the better way to go if you're in the public eye, or
Yeah, I mean, even if I was someone in the public eye, I would just keep it quiet, just my friends and family. I mean, if the word got out, I wouldn't be against it or anything like that. But I mean, it's tough, man. I mean, we don't know what the poor guy went through. Mm-hmm. And then, he chose to stay out of the public eye, and you got to respect his wishes.
This is true. So me, I think it makes sense. I've heard the quote, somebody hears the word cancer, they mentally start to bury you already. So maybe that's how some people felt, and at the end of the day, if I think to retain some normalcy in your quality of life is probably really important to maybe making that battle last longer. So,
well, the funny thing is it's not funny, but the thing is that he still managed to run multiple companies.
Yeah.
During this whole time, since 2019, he was diagnosed. That's several significant institutions that span fashion, art, and culture while he was, undergoing treatment and all this stuff. So
it's insane. A friend of mine who I grew up with, actually ended up working with Virgil in a modeling campaign in, I think it was a year and a half ago. And, that just goes to say nobody, whether it was a random person who was passing by or, I don't even know how many people who really knew him, knew the extent of this. So you're right, Joe, very commendable in terms of what he kept going. And we definitely send our respect and condolences to the Abloh family. We're sending you guys big love from everybody here at SoundMojo. This week in music, back in 1979, all-star rock group Pink Floyd released The Wall, which is arguably one of the most influential albums of all time. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and preach the importance of The Wall. This album came out to see massive success. It sold 1.2 million copies within the first 2 months of its release. Now there's over 30 million copies sold in the entire legacy of the record. It was their second best-selling record after 1973's Dark Side of the Moon. Yep. The album topped the Billboard charts for 15 weeks and still remains one of the best-selling albums of all in U.S. history.
And it's certified 23 times platinum 20 years ago in 1999. So I wonder how many more since then,
So it's double Crazy. Diamond and counting.
Yeah, it's just a crazy album, and I wanted to make sure we spoke about it. I just want to share here with Wikipedia. I thought this was interesting because the whole point of The Wall was because Roger Waters and the band had bad experiences, and it says it here. 1977, Pink Floyd played in the Flesh Tour. It's the first time playing in stadiums. And Roger Waters despised the experience, feeling the audience was not listening. Because stadiums are so big, it's not as intimate, so it's like people are just talking and having their own stuff, right? So it became a social event rather than a more controlled relationship between musicians and the audience. Some members set off firecrackers, which led Waters to stop playing and scolding them. And what's funny is, I remember reading Nick Mason's book on Pink Floyd and didn't know that The Wall basically came out of an incident that happened in Montreal in 1977 at the Olympic Stadium.
Wow.
Where a group of noisy, excited fans near the stage irritated Waters so much he spat on one of them. And that
sounds like Marilyn Manson's current legal troubles, except in the 70s you could do that.
and another thing is David Gilmour refused to perform a final encore. I sat down at the soundboard, leaving the band with backup guitar player, Snowy White, to improvise a sad 12-bar blues. And then Roger Waters announced, this is some music to go home to. Man, that's crazy.
Wow.
It takes some
music to go home to.
Yeah, and then
that's fascinating though.
I know, and then immediately that night he calls Bob Ezrin's friend, was a psychiatrist, and started to explain the whole situation and the feelings he was feeling, and then you get The Wall, basically play behind the wall. Don't even worry about the audience. Play behind the wall, which became. I thought that was so wow, it happened in Montreal. Of course, Montreal had to. We had the '92 riots with Guns N' Roses and Metallica. There's always something in this freaking city, that does creates an event or something. So, in this sense, I'm sort of honored. Wow, Montreal sort of became the linchpin for The Wall. That whole concept of playing behind the bricks. Anyway, I thought that was interesting.
What is it about bands like this, Joe, whether it's the Beatles, Pink Floyd, what is it about them that they don't like the big arena shows? Because these groups, they didn't seem to. I mean, I know Pink Floyd continued to tour, but they didn't seem to like it that much.
Well, look, we saw recently with Astroworld, right? It's a different situation, but when there's just too many people, same thing with Woodstock '99, right? It was just too many people. It's too hard to control. So I think, in the sense that there was no rioting or whatever, but I mean, people start to lose that connection. How far are you in a stadium before you even see the artist? You got to be really far. So I don't know, maybe it cuts off that intimacy. Would people react like that in a club or in a smaller venue? Who knows? But it's a good, interesting question. But I mean, they play these. I've always remember I saw them in '94. At the Big O here in Montreal, and it's just the quality is not there, the sound is not there, you're so far away and stuff, so you start to converse with your friends and maybe get into trouble. Some people are wasted, right? 77 must have been stoners and, people wasted. So it's just interesting that like, I think for me, it's the first artist I know of at that level that like had an aversion to the audience, and like decided to let's play behind the wall. Anyway.
Exactly. No, I mean, always a group that, the whole lore behind them is almost as interesting as the music and just, all the nuts and bolts.
The fact that it was a double album, the label tried to negotiate a smaller royalty share with the band, and like, and then like there was all kinds of arguments going back and forth, and then somebody, the head of the label said, "Well, let's flip a coin for it." I love Roger Waters. He's like, "Why would I flip and gamble on something I own?" You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, seriously. Well, what's mine is not yours to give me type of.
That's it.
Type of feeling. So, that's interesting. Let's jump over to 1982 in the United States. Michael Jackson came out and released his magnum opus called Thriller. It spent 190 weeks on the UK album chart and became the biggest selling pop album of all time, with sales over 66 million copies. I mean, that's insane, Joe. Especially, I mean, I'm sure it wasn't 66 in a year or two, but, back then, even a million albums or two was huge.
Oh, yeah, dude. And this is like 190 weeks. What is that, like 4 years? 3 years?
Yeah.
On the charts, and like 7 singles. Obviously, Beat It, Billie Jean. Like, it's a phenomenal album. I mean, look, it's
basically a greatest hits.
Yeah, pretty much. But like till this day, still hasn't been outsold, and I don't think it ever will be, depending on how streams and album sales are measured and stuff. And imagine, can you just imagine, minimum $10, and you sold over 66 million copies? You're looking like $1 billion. That album must have made $1 billion or $2 billion.
Probably, yeah. I mean, it's got to be one of the biggest albums of all time.
Because you have to think of videos, royalties, airplay. How many times MTV spun those videos, licensing, merch, posters, right? All that stuff. It's just huge.
Insanity. What are your thoughts on the comparison? Because we're hearing it a lot lately with Drake and Michael Jackson in terms of their run, not in terms of their voice, in terms of their run of success. Because when I think of this, the closest thing that I've experienced in my lifetime would probably be Drake once he released the God's Plan single. Yeah,
I can't disagree. I mean, I wouldn't put obviously they're not comparable artist-wise, but like, yeah, definitely a good run. I don't know if, well, maybe it's not comparable, but like Billie Eilish being the last one I remember, or like actually even same summer, right? Lil Nas X with that explosion. Obviously, I'm not comparing Lil Nas to Thriller in terms of like the amount of songs and stuff, but I mean Michael Jackson pushed the envelope with the glove, the styling, the dancing, and so does Lil Nas X, right, with his styling and all that, and the videos. Some of his videos are just crazy. They're like crazy beautiful videos. So, but Thriller video, man, like that, I still remember. Like it scared me when I was a kid. I was like, oh my god! After I watched this, I was like, oh, I'm scared. I got scared. I mean,
generation after
I was
generation,
like 7, 8 years old. So, yeah, I was, and it's a great video, man. Like, anyways, enough has been, like not enough can be said about this album.
This is true. We could go on about it all day. Zooming up to 2012, we have, again, sort of a bittersweet story here. Glen Campbell played the very last live performance of his entire life when he appeared at the Uptown Theater in Napa, California. Campbell revealed his Alzheimer's diagnosis to the public in 2011 and had set out on his goodbye tour as a way to say goodbye to his fans. I mean, pretty decent way to wrap up your life, Joe. I mean, if you're going to go.
Well, I remember that around that time, and it was pretty sad, man. I mean, like I think there was even a movie or something done about it and showed him, throughout the whole process. And yeah, it was pretty moving. I remember.
I feel like there's something to it, to doing what you love until the end. It sort of goes with the theme of what we were talking about with Virgil. I mean, it must make a better quality of life because, again, I've never been there, obviously, but I would assume it gives a sense of closure and a sense of sort of coming full circle with what you love. So definitely a cool story, and rest in peace to Glen Campbell as well. Now we're time traveling today, Joe. We're going to go back to 1963 and have a little chat with the Beatles. Their second album with the Beatles became the first million-selling album by any group out of the UK. The album stayed at the top of the charts for 21 weeks, displacing Please Please Me, so they were competing with themselves.
Exactly.
Which is hilarious. So
That's
that
what
the
I found
Beatles... Exactly. And they occupied the top spot after that for 51 consecutive weeks. So not too shabby, Joe, just over a year.
An entire year owned by the Beatles on the charts, fighting against themselves, pretty much. And today you can't go anywhere without talking about the Beatles, because I mean in general, but I mean now we have the Get Back. Peter Jackson was released. We spoke about it on this show. We just need an extra 2 days in the week to watch the entire thing. It's 460 minutes,
I know.
True to Peter Jackson fashion. I mean, that's how he works. He doesn't cut corners, that's for sure, that guy.
It's the Lord of the Rings of the Beatles.
Exactly. And I watched a little bit, and we're gonna Cassius and I are gonna have a special video on it. We don't know exactly when, but we're still planning the stuff to react to it, talk about our viewpoints. But it's the first thing I can say, man, is just that I didn't even realize I was watching restored footage. That's just all I got to say right now.
Because it looked so damn good. Yeah, I mean, always something up the sleeve. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, we have something really cool planned for you guys.
That's it. And also in this week, also the anniversary of George Harrison passing away. So that's, we wanted to mention that. And here in 2002, George Harrison High Court probate records show George Harrison left his fortune of £99 million in a trust to his wife and son, depriving the taxman, of 40 million pounds.
They warned us about the taxman.
yeah, exactly. That's it, So anyways, I just wanted to mention George Harrison, such an iconic figure, obviously being part of the Beatles. So rest in peace, George.
100%. Rest in peace. He's probably my second favorite Beatle. I can't really pick my top guy.
I can't. Right? I would probably say Ringo. I'm not as big a fan of the other three, let's say, but it's hard. McCartney or Lennon, it's just it's so hard to pick.
Almost impossible.
Which is a good thing. It just speaks to actually, if you watch the Rick Rubin with McCartney 3-2-1, it's so funny because he says there's such enough distance now that he became a fan of the Beatles as well.
Right.
Listening to that stuff, and I love that when you can't pick apart a band, everybody is just important in that whole band, not one is more than the other, so.
No, without a doubt. It's, the Fabulous Four, the Fab Four, that's what they would call them, right?
Fab Four, yeah.
It's it had to be all them together for that magic. So that's a little bit of on this day or on this week, technically in this case for music history. We look forward to coming back with you guys with more of this, and we're going to be having a new segment revolving around this on this day concept that's going to be more regular. So definitely stay tuned for that. But I don't think we should keep you guys anymore. We have a fantastic episode with the legend himself, Paul Gilbert. And Joe, should we jump right into this?
I think we have no choice, man.
All right, well, let's do it. Here's Paul Gilbert, and we'll chat with you guys right after.
Come on and love me. 1 and 2. I'm a Capricorn.
He's a Cancer.
I saw my picture in a music magazine.
That's right. She sure did.
Don't you hesitate.
Epic, awesome. Man. What a way to start the podcast. I mean, we've already gone to the top here.
Yep. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Leave while you're on top,
That's it. Paul Gilbert, welcome to Innersleeve, and thanks so much for taking the time today. We really appreciate it. We can see you surrounded by your babies there, the guitars. How many guitars do you think you have in that room, Paul?
I don't know. 30-ish. I'm not sure.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow, man. Insane. And how far back does this collection go? Are these vintage guitars that you've been using for your whole career?
I think the oldest one I have that I had when I was a kid is probably the one my dad made. When I was for my 15th birthday, I sold my coin collection. It was funny. There's a Black Sabbath album called "We Sold Our Souls for Rock and Roll." I sold my coin collection for rock and roll. And I got a neck, and then my dad bought a big chunk of maple and built a flying V body. And we didn't know that people don't use maple for guitar bodies. They only use it for the top.
Yeah.
Because it's so heavy that if you make a whole body out of it, it's like, and you get your spine gets twisted. But that's what we do. We made a solid maple flying V, and although it was heavy, it sounded amazing.
For sure.
And there was an ad on TV at the time for a product called Mr. Microphone, and so we decided to call the guitar that my dad bought, we called it Mr. Guitar.
There you go.
Painted it pink and purple,
Of course,
and that was my main. Oh, I remember too that there was a problem with the jack on it, where if you pulled on it, the whole guitar would shut off.
Oh.
But I ended up using it for like the Ace Frehley stutter. You go,
yeah.
Right.
and it's, even though it wasn't supposed to do that, I could like stutter faster than you could with the switch. So that's my story.
Do you still have that guitar?
I've got a storage locker too, so it's in there
for sure.
I need to get some work done on it because it's I forget it. I think the frets. I just need to put some new strings on. That'd help.
That would help. At least it's got that secret sound though unlocked. I mean, I would imagine every guitar sort of has like maybe a little feature that you can maybe use to your advantage for a unique sound.
Well, that and you just try to match your hat, or that's really it. I do so many videos from my online school. I'm always on camera.
So you want to match?
I'll sit down and I'll go like, it doesn't really match the hat, so one of the things has to go. Either I got to get a new hat or a new guitar. And but seriously, I would say the setup has a lot to do with it, because lately I've been putting my action much higher, because that works for slide. I've been playing more slide. And if your action's too low, it gets real buzzy. So I've been raising the action up. And that's so nice, because it not being buzzy is really good, and that means I can hit it really hard. Like if I sit there and like sort of hack away at it, it still comes through clear. And that's
right.
I watch a lot of my students, and they're like real careful. Well, be careful, you might hit something by accident. and maybe that's one of the things I got from being in a band with Billy Sheehan. And Mr. Big was, I'd look over and he was like the Tasmanian devil, like a tornado of motion, and it wasn't, I mean, a lot of times bass lines can be simple. So, his job is to go like,
right.
So that might be the sound, but it's, it's like using every limb to make it happen. And of course, if he needs to do something fancy, he's got it wired. But that was inspiring. It'd be like, well, how's it? I got to get something going too. So I think a lot of my larger sort of painting with a big brush things come from looking over and seeing Billy and going, I got to keep up.
Man,
I'm sure many guitar players like Steve Vai, yourself, when they look over and they're like, holy cow, I got to keep up with this guy, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I know it's a really cool time for you because you have the Christmas record coming out, of course, called Twas. I never thought I'd find myself rocking out to a Christmas album, but here I was the last couple of days just jamming out. I mean, maybe talk to us about sort of the inspiration behind that.
For Twas, well, first of all, I recorded it in the summertime. And it was kind of a wonderful feeling being the only person walking down the street in like the heat wave and singing to myself, let it snow, let it snow.
Pretty unique.
It was a good headspace, and really different than I've been, really different headspace than I've been in, because in past Christmases, I'm old enough where I've heard those Christmas songs a lot. And I remember, like, in recent years past, just thinking like, we need some new ones. I'm tired of hearing these songs again. That's enough, you know. But somehow, I thought that's what I have to solve. I have to make it where the songs that I'm tired of, somehow I arrange it or play it in such a way where I'm excited to hear it and play it.
Yeah.
And so that began with research, just going back and finding. It turns out Nat King Cole is probably my favorite Christmas performer.
Wow.
I don't know. These were recordings from the 40s or 50s. Huge orchestra, a choir. It's a lot of people involved in making that happen. So I hired a couple jazz musicians to come by, and I said, like, okay, check out this Nat King Cole version, and you guys chart it out.
Oh man,
they know how to do that. They're
right.
smart. They're jazz musicians. So I say, you guys write the charts, and then I'll just play the melody on top. And then I tend to play with my rock and roll instincts, and because I didn't grow up listening to jazz. I grew up listening to Ted Nugent and rock and roll players. So to me that was a nice mix. Is me sort of having my toothy rock feel on top, and them having the sophistication of getting the chords right. And then I had a blues rhythm section. So it's groovy and it has sort of has an earthy feel to it. So I was happy. As a producer, I think I made good choices there. Yeah. And actually, a couple songs in, I started getting more confidence about some of that sophisticated stuff. So and I knew all the guys could read. And usually I get rock musician, none of us can read, but
right.
But I went to school for years, so I know a little bit about it, and I started writing charts, which is scary. I never write charts, but it was I know the guys could read them. It was an easy way to get the point across. So I felt like a real musician.
Was this the first time working with these musicians?
I worked with Timmer, the bass player. He so on my last tour, I had a guy named Roland Guerin playing bass, but his wife was having a baby, so he had to go home and be a dad, which I understand. I'm a dad too. So while Roland was home, I got Timmer to come out, and Timmer was great. So I had him play, and he's local. He lives in Portland. So he played bass. Jimmy I never played with before. He's a drummer, and Jimmy played with the Fabulous Thunderbirds with Jimmy Vaughn.
Oh,
nice. So that's like the real deal for
oh my gosh,
blues drumming. Yeah. And then Dan, the guitar player, I'd played a little bit with him before because he's kind of a local legend jazz guitar player. And I've got an online guitar school. So when I moved to Portland, everybody was saying, oh, you got to hook up with Dan Ballmer. He's like top jazz guy in town. So I actually invited him over to interview him because I wanted to interview him from my guitar school. And we jammed a little bit. And he's the real deal. He's a lifer musician, knows everything. So it's nice to hang out with guys like that. And then Dan recommended Clay. And, Clay's is that guy on keyboards, just
okay.
Give him the chart and he's got it down.
Awesome, man. Do you find it refreshing having a mix of newer people and sort of people that you're familiar with, or like, is there any sort of combination that you prefer in the studio?
I think basically what I did is I just brought everybody together for one rehearsal to make sure it worked. Sort of a test drive.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I way before, I told the guy that contact everybody and said, this is the date. Let's get together at Jimmy's studio. You're not working for free. I'll get you a paycheck for it, and let's play Winter Wonderland. Wow. And so we did. We just did a demo of Winter Wonderland, and and it was interesting too because like the guys will always ask me questions. They'll be like, "Oh, do you want it this way?" And I'll be like, I don't know, do it where you're happy, play it where it feels good to you. And that's always the best answer, because if they're happy playing it, it's going to be something that sounds cool. So, so I hardly ever had an answer for them except, be you. And actually that's different than what I used to do. Before I used to really micromanage. And a lot of my early solo albums, I'd have like every single part demoed down to the finest detail. You got to play this part, don't change it. And I really prefer getting good people and letting them do what they want, and that they're happier, and I get nice surprises all the time because they bring stuff in that's outside of my skill set or range of knowledge. So, you know, when we play the song, it's like, wow, this is, you know, I'm me, but I'm better.
That's so cool though, because I mean, it brings out a very different element. It sounds like in terms of the creative process.
I mean, absolutely, and if anything, I would ask them questions too. You know, a song like "Hark," which is the first video I released. You know, it's got the melody. You know. And so, you know, you play that 3 times and you're done. And I thought, you know, it needs something else, you know, and so I kind of went to Dan, the guitar player, said, you know, how do we make this song longer? Because it's a minute and a half. And he goes, well, put 2 chords, you know, and jam over that. And that was the solution. And plus it was a nice challenge because I don't normally play over those jazzy sounding chords. So I had to do a little homework. And that's the best way of being stretched out as a musician, you know, to have somebody, you know, add an idea that you wouldn't have thought of. And then you've got to adapt to it and figure out how to actually, you know, you got the boat, now put it in the water and
exactly
keep it from sinking, you know.
Get the thing rolling. One thing I was wondering, because you mentioned the music reading, when you're talking with your students, do you encourage them to know how to read music? Do you think it's a big help, or do you think it's not quite fully necessary for a guitarist?
Well, I think that's a sort of a style question.
Okay.
Because certain styles of music, reading is a much bigger deal. If you're a classical musician, then absolutely you need to read. If you're a jazz musician, you need to read chord charts. If you're a rock musician or a blues musician, maybe not. I mean, I got my start reading, you know, chord charts with like a Beatles songbook, and that's nice to have. But again, the Beatles weren't readers, so a lot of it is just being fluent with the style that you choose and with the tools that you need for that style. And I teach rock primarily, so for rock you really don't need that much reading. For rock, you need a really good sense of time. Okay. And you need to be fluent with the kind of chords and solos that rock has. So if anything, the thing that I do that kind of holds everything together, keep the structure from falling apart, is to have a really solid sense of time. And that's you know, we're visual creatures. You know, being a human being, your primary way of experiencing the world is visual. Mm-hmm. And so for musicians, it can be tough because it's like, yeah, I'm a musician, but I'm also a human being. I want to look at something. Mm-hmm. And for notes, you've got a solution there, because with guitar, you can see an A note. It's like, okay, there it is. I'm looking at it. My eyes tell me that's an A without even listening. But my eyes don't really tell me what a rhythm is. For that, you need to listen, you need to feel. And you can't rely, I mean, unless you're, you know, really a in-depth sight reader. And to me, that's not the easiest path. The easiest path is you spend some time really sort of doing what a drummer would do, you know, where you get your limbs and your head moving to the beat, which seems really simple, and hopefully it is. But then you start having to coordinate that with playing syncopations on the guitar, and you're kind of juggling multiple rhythms at once. And I think a lot of people, when they first encounter that, like, oh, it's a lot of work or it's hard, but it's worth it because, man, it feels so good. When you, like, you know, have your foot doing one rhythm and you're singing another rhythm, you're playing another rhythm, you're holding all together, and it's like you're giving the music a big hug, and you feel it in a physical way, and it's just, you know, why let drummers have all the fun?
Yeah, exactly.
Seriously, right? We have that beat and melody on the guitar side too.
And the and notes, you know, notes are notes, they're good, but, you know, rock and roll, so much of it is the rhythmic part of it. And so and that's a big part of the melodies, like playing the Christmas album. You know, a song like I did, what was that one? Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. And that's tricky because there's not a strong beat to it. It's more free form. And believe it or not, I was trying to copy Barbra Streisand, because she's got, she does an amazing version of that from her record that came out in the 60s. And so I was listening to the way she phrased it, and it's genius. You know, she sings it so well. but it's hard to copy because it's not like, okay, here's the beat and here's how it relates to the beat.
Right.
You know, she's very much just sort of feeling this ebbing and flowing rhythm, and you know, to me, it was really inspiring to do that as well. And that's not as much rock and roll as it is, you know, I don't know, jazz or whatever it is, but it's still great music.
No, that makes a lot of sense. It's more of a stylistic difference. You know, I wanted to ask you about this because obviously you spend a lot of time talking with students, and you're very, you know, you're in the mix of everything going on in music right now. What are your thoughts on apps like, say, TikTok or some of the newer apps that are coming up in terms of musicians? Do you think that something like this is helping them more, or is it hurting them more?
Well, I'm not that familiar with TikTok, but you know, the one I know about is Instagram.
Right.
And what it ends up doing, like, you know, it sort of encourages you to have something that's really exciting and fiery for like 10 seconds.
Right.
Because, you know, you want to like grab the person's attention, you know, your viewer's attention in that amount of time to get them to, you know, just to keep watching or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's really different than, like, you know, like the prog rock I grew up when I was a kid would be like an album side.
Right.
You know, Rush Hemispheres, like, you know,
one track,
25 minute song on one side of the record. Or I can't remember the length, but, you know, these long things, and you almost had to study it as a fan. You know, and it had long instrumental breakdowns and stuff that, you know, as you had to like do your homework as a fan. So that was like the other end of it, you know, having a really long attention span. And I don't know, I mean, to me, both things are an art. You know, there's an art to being amazing in 10 seconds. There's an art to being amazing in 22 minutes. And I don't know if either one is, you know, they are what they are. But to me, you don't want to lose either one. You know, right. It would be a shame to say, like, okay, you know, every song you do has to be 22 minutes long. Like that would be silly.
That's out the door.
But it would also be silly to say, okay, the only thing you can do is little 10-second explosions.
Right.
So it's just a new format. You know, it's like haiku poetry in Japan has a real definite structure to it, and that's haiku. You know, and not everything has to be haiku. So to me, that's the thing. It's just like a new art form. It is what it is. But, you know, try not to throw away all the other stuff because it's cool too.
Yeah. As a new, like, you have a vast discography of work and stuff, but as someone new who hears Paul Gilbert for the first time, where would you recommend they start?
Oh my goodness, I'm still working on that. I would say that's a good question. You know, a couple albums ago, I did a record called "Behold Electric Guitar." And that turned out really good. It's funny because I didn't start as a blues guitar player at all. I started as a, you know, heavy metal guitar player, and one of my favorite songs on that record is called "Blues for Rabbit." Rabbit's a reference to Johnny Hodges, who was the saxophone player in the Duke Ellington band. Okay. And so this is all style. You know, it's me really reaching out to different styles. But I think what happened is, like, heavy metal as it was sort of like a third generation blues. You know, heavy metal came from hard rock came from rock came from rock and roll came from blues. And so and from teaching too, that's what I would find is, like, I would find that blues was often the missing element from younger players, and it was really missing. Like, you need that in the stew. You know, it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be everything, but it has to be in there a little bit. Right. So "Blues for Rabbit" was a song that I actually wrote for a student to train his ear to hear blues changes and to hear blues melodies. But I liked it so much that I used it for a song, and we ended up getting one take in the studio. It was a magical performance. It's on YouTube. It's got like 2 million views, and so I would say, you know, type in "Blues for Rabbit" and check that out. And it's live, so it's honest. And wow. And I remember being like, you know, my brain was barely functioning because, you know, I had a bunch of personal stuff going on. I had gotten no sleep the night before. Oh wow! And so, you know, I was like running on instinct, and it's some of my best playing I'm really proud of how I played in that tune, and it's to me that's it was the planets kind of aligned and allowed me to to sing with my guitar and get it done right, even though everything was against me.
Sometimes that's what it is, how it happens, greatness, also, like, just how do you keep yourself inspired, right?
Oh, well, that's fortunately that's pretty easy to do. I mean, I just find music that I love. I do a lot of researching, and lately it's been to play melodies. And that sounds so simple, like, oh, haven't you always been doing that? It's like, no, the guitar playing that I grew up with, the singer's job is the melody, and my job as a guitar player is to back them up. Yeah. So while the singer's playing, and they're doing the melody, and then when it's my turn, I do something fiery, sort of like trying to make an explosion happen, but that's not a melody either. So I'm either like backing up the singer or lighting notes on fire.
Right.
And so, as a kid, I wasn't really interested in the guitar players that played melody, because they were some. There was like, in Boston, there, with
True.
That's kind of, or Jeff Beck,
right, Jeff Beck.
Melodic guitar players, but I wasn't into those guys. I was into the fiery guys. So I think maybe it was from touring with Joe Satriani. I did a G3 tour with Joe Satriani. I guess it's a long time ago now. It was like 2007 or something. But watching how he, took on the role of a lead singer with his guitar was amazing. It was beautiful, and the audience loved it. And I'm there watching every night and going like, maybe there's something to this. So gradually I got more and more into it, and it's not simple to make it where I like it, because if you just sort of play the notes and stamp them out, it's lifeless.
Yeah,
you have to find all these elements of expression, you slide into it, and you're dealing with as many contrasts as you can. Making notes short and long on purpose. Which one should be short? And you have to have those instincts to make those decisions. And you got to make them quick, and loud and soft, and different textures you get with your pick, and all this stuff has to be intuitive, and it has to come from having that target in your ear of what it should sound like. So, and that's the thing where I've got, I'm in a good spot, because I grew up as a fan of singers.
Right.
I listened to a ton of Beatles and Led Zeppelin and Aerosmith and pop music from the 70s and in the 90s. I wasn't listening to rock. I was listening to Mariah Carey. Katie Lang. I love I love the divas.
Why not?
So I always have singers in my head, and I always my first thought is like, okay, well, I'll try to sing, but I don't have much of an instrument. My voice is lower register voice. And, if I sing a Johnny Cash song, I can hit the notes, but, anything higher, and I start to struggle a bit. But if I start to play the notes on my guitar, and that was actually the first thing where I really had success with it was I started playing a Janis Joplin, that song she did, Mercedes Benz, which is all a cappella. It's just her and a foot stomp. She's like, oh, Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz? And I tried it on guitar. And that took me a long time to get it where it was fluent and it felt natural, and I wasn't just to connect it to what I heard in my head.
It's like the blues connection you made earlier. Like that's a big element of it, with the melody and the feel, more than just notes on a page.
Yeah, more than typing it.
Right.
And it's funny, like it's, if you look at different instruments, every instrument has limitations. And to me, like the harpsichord's interesting, because the harpsichord, there's no vibrato. You can't go. You can't bend. The harpsichord won't do that. A harpsichord also has no dynamics.
Exactly.
No matter how hard you hit it or how soft you hit it, the same volume comes out. And so, and it's, but the harpsichord is also a beautiful instrument. There's amazing music that's made with it, but you don't. There's a couple elements that you're not going to be able to use, and with guitar, the guitar actually has not that many limitations. You can play chords, you can play quiet and soft. Maybe the thing you can't do with guitar, it's hard to do two parts at once. I mean, some players do a little bit. You could finger pick people, but not the way a piano can. Piano can really do like, this is doing one thing, is totally separate, and it works. And of course, drums, you can do that with four. You got your feet too. Or like an organ, you've got bass pedals, so you can do three things. So with the guitar, I feel like I've either got chords or I've got like a monophonic solo. So there's limitations, and you make the most of those. And fortunately, if you work for them, you can get close to some of the things a vocalist can do. You don't have words, so I suppose that's something that the way a vocalist shapes the word, even meaning aside. Because I love bands like Loudness, a Japanese heavy metal band from the 80s. It's all in Japanese. I can't understand what they're saying.
Right.
But it's awesome. And then you still, you get the musical effect of the word being shaped. And I can do that a little bit with a pick. With one note, I could get different sounds. But I'm never going to have a word like a singer will. So I try.
Man,
nobody told Steve Vai that, right, when he did that song from Passionate Warfare, right? He sounds like someone talking.
I think the guitar is pretty good.
It's incredible. I mean, they say that the cello was the closest to the human voice in terms of like the lyricalness of it, but like I think the guitar comes super close to that, right, with the bending and the feel you can put into it. Speaking of guitar, like we got a question from the Watch Mojo audience from Jose Villarreal here. I'd love to know your thoughts on guitar and guitar solos in today's music, or lack thereof guitar solos.
Oh, well, I'm guilty of not knowing much about today's music. I think around, when I think of the music that I'm really familiar with, like the 70s is this huge peak. 80s, I know a lot of stuff. 90s, some. You get to 2000. I know like one Britney Spears song called 3, which is a really cool song. 1, 2, 3.
Good melody.
I love that Britney Spears song, but that's like the only song I know of the entire decade of so mostly I researched back in time. Like I was really curious about Artie Shaw. It was an amazing life. Like he was dating all the hot actresses, and you listen to him play clarinet, and he's like Yngwie Malmsteen, the virtuoso Swedish guitar player. His clarinet playing is like, whoa! He's like an athlete. He's unbelievable. And so, I kind of get interested in my roots, and then just do my thing. And although I did listen to who's the girl that with the green hair?
Billie Eilish.
Yeah. And the production was, and she's singing tune, and the production was really interesting.
Yep. Yeah. That's her brother Phineas.
I really thought the production was imaginative and was doing new things. But again, like I've been listening to TNT lately, 80s heavy metal band. And then playing the vocal line. I never thought I would settle down. Anyway, it looks like I got to get to my next interview.
Yes, you do. Well, cool. Paul, thank you so much for your time, and we seriously appreciate it.
Right on. Thank you so much. Rock and roll. Merry Christmas.
Rock and roll. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Big shout out to Paul Gilbert and his team for facilitating this podcast. We really appreciate everybody taking the time, and all smiles from that podcast, Joe. I think, my face hurt from smiling by the end of it.
I was just going to say that, like, man, like ear to ear. out of control, just like a big northern wind just came into the interview, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, I gotta go, and he's out.
Yeah, it was so cool, just to see the way that he operates, the way that he thinks, and like you said off the top of the show, I mean, there's nothing I could picture this guy doing better and loving more than what he does now. And how I mean, the guys from Kiss probably don't even have that much fun playing "Come On and Love Me" anymore, but he still loves it.
But his energy is incredible, like we didn't even get to ask. We got 1-2 fan questions in that people asked, and it was just like, wow, we didn't even realize what was happening. It's great, like that's like our dream, right? When you ask a question and the guy just runs with it, and then he even played through some of the stuff that Janis Joplin, some of the Christmas stuff, he was giving us examples. It's so cool, man.
So cool. Yeah, I mean, you guys would have no clue how. The interviews is never exactly how you think it's going to go. You could have a sheet as long as your arm of questions that you think we'll never get to all of this. Yeah. And then you do get to all of it because they give you 2-second answers, or it might be the opposite. You might have, a sheet as long as your arm and you get to one question. So, it's always just, it's interesting to see. And we're just going to keep bringing you guys a bunch of great guests right here on Innersleeve. So thank you for tuning in. If you want to keep catching up with us on all of the platforms that we have, you can follow us on social media at SoundMojo. That's Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, wherever you can find social media, you can find SoundMojo. Of course, subscribe on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/SoundMojo, and click the little notification bell right next to that button to make sure you get up-to-date real-time updates about everything we're doing.
Like, share, comment. Sorry, I cut you off there. Like, share, comment. It goes a long way, like when we see some likes and some shares, it helps the channel grow a bit.
Yes. Sorry. On the videos, and no, it's okay. On our videos and on our community tab and our polls, which you put up almost every single week to find out what you guys want to see in here on the channel. Between the podcast and our almost daily music uploads on SoundMojo, we have a wealth of content, so make sure to go check that out. Am I missing anything, Joe, or are we done for the week?
I think we're good, man. We made it through.
We made it through episode 50, guys. This is a milestone. Thank you so much for listening. Just from the bottom of my heart, I think me and Joe can speak for the rest of the team here at SoundMojo. We really appreciate all the support you guys have given the podcast. And we can't wait to see you guys again next week with episode 51. So stay safe, stay tuned, and we'll catch you guys then.